In this video, we're ranking the artifacts from Heroes of Might and Magic 2. We're starting with the ones that increase spell power. We have the Arcane Necklace plus 4 spell power, Witch's Brooch plus 3, Mage's Ring, and Caster's Bracelet with plus 2 spell power. Now, spell power is extremely important. Now, just for completeness, but I'm sure you know this already, but spell power affects the effectiveness of your spells. For the damaging ones, you deal more damage. So, for example, for a lightning bolt, that deals 25x power. Obviously, if you get plus 4, you deal 100 more damage every single time you cast a lightning bolt. Or for a cold ray, that's 20x power normally. Then you would deal 80 more damage with this specific artifact, the necklace, right? So that's pretty strong. And also, spell power affects the duration of a lot of spells, because you would see most of the time the duration is 1 round per spell power, right? But there are some diminishing returns at some point. I mean, do you really need a Bless to last 10 turns or more? Probably not. So that effect kind of loses its value the more spell power you have, but still. So spell power is extremely important. Spells in Heroes of Might and Magic 2 are completely broken. So, of course, adding to spell power is almost always a good idea. So these are quite strong, I would say, but there's a distinction between them maybe, because these one compared to the ones that have plus 2 spell power only, these guys with plus 3 and plus 4 can be used by the factions that don't quite favor getting spell power whenever they level up, because, you know, there's a percentage, there's some chance whenever some hero levels up, based on his faction, they would favor getting a specific skill, probably. Like, for example, the Barbarians, most of the time they will get attack skill plus 1. Or the Knights getting plus 1 defense. But when it comes to Wizards and, let's say, Warlocks, they will get spell power and knowledge more often than not, right? So whenever it comes to these factions that are spellcasters anyway, the effect of these artifacts would be that they just deal more damage, or the spells last longer, but that wasn't necessarily an issue for them. But for the factions that don't even start off with a book, like the Barbarians and Knights, adding a necklace or the Witch's Brooch, that can make them that can turn them into reasonable spellcasters, which is quite strong because they already have a lot of defense or attack skill, and also they can start casting some spells that last a reasonable amount of time, like Blind, which is super controlling, or just Bless, Curse, Bloodlust, whatever. And also they can still start dealing damage directly to the opposition. So that it's quite strong because it compensates for that lack of natural spell power that these factions might have. So I would say there's a distinction between these artifacts. But overall, spell power is extremely important in these games. So I would say these are pretty high up there. So I would say that the necklace with plus 4 and the brooch with plus 3 should be in an S in this specific order. And the other ones maybe just an A, but they are very, very good. Next, we have the White Pearl and Black Pearl, which increase spell power and knowledge each. This one, the White Pearl plus 1 and Black Pearl plus 2. So this is a more balanced compensation in a sense, right? So imagine you're a barbarian, you have 1 knowledge, 1 spell power. Right, of course, you can compensate with plus 2 spell power, plus 3 spell power, something like that. But if you don't have the knowledge, you don't have many spell points, which means that even if your spells are more devastating, let's say, you can't cast too many of them. Or also, it's a problem whenever you're facing somebody who has a ton of knowledge and has the spells that would counter yours. Like if you are trying to go for Bless and the guy has Curse, well, you're kind of screwed there. Because if you don't have that much spell power, then it's only a matter of time until the opposition will start casting some spells that you cannot counter whatsoever because you ran out of spell power. Yours are gonna get countered really quickly, and then from that point onwards in the battle, the opposition is gonna cast spells and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's a problem most of the time for these factions. So adding a bit of knowledge as well is an interesting compensation for sure. And The Black Pearl obviously is quite strong. It's one of the strongest artifacts in the game for sure, and this is a no-brainer for absolutely everybody, no matter what faction you are, wizards, necromancers, whatever, right? This is extremely important. This, I would say, you know, in many ways, the Black Pearl, or in many situations, the Black Pearl offers more value than the necklace that gives you just 4 spell power, right? But it really depends. If you already have the knowledge, then it's not going to be that that impactful. And also, there's a diminishing returns point that you reach with knowledge as well. I mean, I haven't played every single possible scenario, but I think that most of the time, whenever I get 10 or 12 knowledge, from that point onwards, more knowledge doesn't help that much, right? So it depends here. You can consider the opportunity cost. If you're a wizard, you have 10 knowledge already. Would you prefer the Black Pearl or any of these artifacts that give more spell power than the Black Pearl? Well, probably not. You won't necessarily go for the Black Pearl if you would be in an ideal situation. But still, these are very strong for sure. But how strong, actually? Well, I would say because these are a bit more balanced and makes sense, especially for those barbarians and knight factions, I would say that potentially the White Pearl, which gives +1/+1, might be better than these guys that give +2 spell power. Maybe, debatable, but the Black Pearl might be better than the +3 spell power, but it's situational if it's going to be more impactful than the +4 spell power, because this deals so much more damage. This one just enables you to cast more spells and for them to be a bit more impactful. So I don't know, or even, you know, the White Pearl may be a bit below. Perhaps it's just +1 spell power, +1 knowledge. Maybe it's not as strong as just dealing way more damage, or the spells lasting 2 turns more. Maybe like this, but it's a bit debatable, but still S and A for sure. Next one is the Ballista. The catapult receives an extra shot per round, 2 and 3 with advanced ballistics. So that is pretty interesting. You know, whenever I get this artifact, I'm never disappointed. I think it's pretty good, but the problem is that it's kind of, its use is situational because, well, most battles are not a siege. So most of the time you're not attacking a castle. And even whenever you need to attack a castle, there's some preparation time as well. And on most maps, it takes some time to get to a castle. Maybe you get ballistics on the way there. Oh, I don't know. But still, yeah, combining this with ballistics makes it very strong because you get rid of those turrets faster, right? And the ballista. Also, imagine if you combine this with Earthquake, it's game over for the opposition. But Ballista is a pretty good artifact, I would say. But I'm not sure about a situation. Like, for example, if you don't have ballistics at all, there's a chance your catapult misses entirely. You know? What happens if you have a ballista? You still miss, I think, every once in a while. Or is it possible to miss 2 times in a row? Not sure. So it really depends. But whenever you combine it with ballistics, it's pretty strong, I would say. You know, you destroy the castle walls, you can get in there. You know, right? It's there are the same considerations why I said that ballistics is as a secondary skill is pretty good, and ballista helps with that quite immensely, I would say. So this is a nice artifact, I would say. Maybe just a B. You know, lower than these other ones. It's not that effective. It's kind of because it's situational, maybe even a B-, or actually kind of like a C+, perhaps. It really depends. Let me just leave it at a C+ for now, but who knows, we might revisit it later. And now we got to the ones that increase attack skill. So the Dragon Sword, +3, Giant Flail, +1, Power Axe, +2, and Thunder Mace, +1 to attack. Now, how significant is the attack skill? Is the ultimate question here. Well, just for completeness, I know you already know this, but whenever a creature attacks another, the game calculates the difference between the attacker's attack skill and the defender's defense skill. And based on that difference, there's the conclusion that there will be bonus damage or damage reduction going on. So if, you know, per point of difference of attack, right? So if the attack is greater than the defense, per point of difference, you would get 10% extra damage, right? So for example, if you have 10 attack skill, the defender has 7 defense skill, then the difference is 3, so you deal 30% more damage than you would normally. So that's pretty strong. But if the defense is higher, so let's say the defense is 10 and the attack is 7, that means that the damage reduction is going to be 15%, not 30%. It's different here when it comes to the defense. It's only 5% per point of difference in favor of the defense. So that's an interesting consideration as well, right? Which means that if you already are dealing a lot of extra damage, adding such an artifact makes you deal even more. It adds a percentage to that damage modifier, right? To that conclusion, right? You deal 40% more damage, you add the Dragon Sword, now you deal 70% more damage instead. That's pretty good. But if you're dealing reduced damage already, you just kind of reduce the reduction. Or you might go into the other side of the spectrum and you start dealing more damage. Like, for example, if the point difference, or the difference is 2 in favor of the defense, so it's 10% damage reduction, and you add the Dragon Sword, well, now you deal 10% more damage, right? Because now the difference is 1 in the favor of the attack, so 10% more. So that's interesting. But yeah. Anyway, you can think about these, well, this specific artifact, the Dragon Sword, for example, that adds +3 to attack. It's as if you would mass Bloodlust your whole army. Now, that spell doesn't exist, but if it would be quite costly and pretty significant, I would say. Or it's a mass disrupting ray onto the opposition, which seems insanely strong, right? Yeah, the question now is how significant is the attack skill as compared to the spell power? Because these other artifacts that we've talked about, you know, they make it so the damaging spells would deal more damage, or the spells would last longer, and so on and so forth, right? So let's say a +3 to spell power, right? Let's compare the Witch's Brooch to the Dragon Sword, for example. Which one is better? Well, it depends, because let's say in terms of raw damage, right? Lightning Bolt would deal 75 more damage with +3 spell power than you would have normally. So +75 all the time, flat, constant, easy, reliable. +3 attack on the other hand, well, it depends on how many units you have, how many stacks, and how much damage you deal, and what happens in the battle as well, right? It is very much likely that initially in the battle, your attacks, or the total amount of extra damage that you would have with the Dragon Sword as opposed to not having it, that total amount of damage might be more than whatever you would deal as extra damage with that Witch's Brooch on yourself and casting spells, right? Yeah, sure. But in time, it might become a little bit more irrelevant, the attack skill, because if you start losing stacks or units in stacks, then, yeah, it's the total amount of damage, or the damage output, is going to become lower, right? So it's interesting because attack skill scales better in time, for example. So if you have +3 attack, that's going to be significant the entire game. Right, if you get at some point to the situation in which you have like 30 titans or something ridiculous, right? Or a lot of dragons, right? And you deal 30% more damage, or you add that to that final conclusion, right? That damage modifier. If you add 30% to that, that could be insane if you have a lot of units. Whereas +3 spell power has just that very constant damage output that might become irrelevant. Like, for example, what are you going to do with that 75 more damage with a Lightning Bolt against 30 Titans? That's not going to be as significant. You know, you're limited because it's constant. When it comes to this, it's just percentage-based, which scales very well. However, still, I would say that because spells are so broken in this game, maybe attack skill is a little bit less relevant, or maybe not attack skill overall, but these artifacts are not as significant as the ones that increase spell power, I would say. It's kind of debatable. It really depends on the situation for sure, but based on my intuition, I would say that spell power is still stronger. But I would say attack is these artifacts are pretty good as well. But how significant though? Well, I would say that, you know, the +3 attack is so significant that it might be better for sure than the White Pearl. Well, it depends on the faction, right? This enables the Barbarians and Knights to cast more spells and for them to last one more turn. but the +3 attack is quite significant for pretty much everybody. More significant than +2 spell power for absolutely everybody. I'm not sure. It's debatable, but it's kind of close, I would say. Definitely not better than the Witch's Brooch or the Black Pearl and all that. So probably around here for the Dragon Sword, which is the strongest one of them all. And now the Power Axe +2 attack. Now, is this more significant than +1 spell power, +1 knowledge? Maybe, but again, it's kind of close. I would say intuitively this makes sense, right? To have the pearl in between, maybe, but it's not like I'm that precise. I don't know. It's based on intuition more so. And the other ones like +1 attack, that is a little bit insignificant, I would say. +1 attack might be just 10% more damage, which is okay, or 10% added to that final conclusion, I mean, and that's all right. But in the worst case scenario, whenever there's a damage reduction going on anyway, you just reduce the reduction by 5% only with these artifacts. So is that super significant? Maybe not, but I would put them maybe at a B only, right? Maybe that makes sense, but let me know what you think. And also, if you're enjoying this video so far, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Now it's time for the defensive ones. Armored Gauntlet, +1 to defense. Defender's Helm, +1 again. Divine Breastplate +3 and Stealth Shield +2. So it's exactly the equivalent, right? It's the exact same kind of distribution, but now adding to defense. It's kind of the same thing, right? It's just all these artifacts just contribute to that calculation, right? To that difference. So it's kind of the same thing, I would say. Like +3 to defense. Yeah, well, again, if the attacker has more attack skill than you, for example, then you reduce the damage by quite a lot. Like, for example, if they already deal 40% more damage and you add the Divine Breastplate, now they only deal 10% more damage, right? So that's quite significant because the drop is huge. But if you already have a lot of defense, it's not as impactful because it's just a 15% extra damage reduction going on. So that is interesting, but it's kind of the same thing, I would say. Or, I would say that probably, having more defense is a bit of a passive thing or ability, but having more offense is more controlling, I would say, right? Because if you have a lot of defense, it kind of depends on what the opposition does. But if you have a lot of offense, you can control that effect more. You can choose what to do with that ability, for sure. Who's going to be the target? Who's going to be damaged more? With defense, is a bit too passive. So I'd say maybe just defense is just a little bit worse, just because of that more lack of control, maybe. So, but I would say that these are pretty much, they have the same effect as the attack counterparts, but because of this consideration, I would put them slightly lower. So that would be my logic, but let me know what you think. But I would say Divine Breastplate just a little bit worse than the Dragon's Sword. Stealth Shield, a little bit worse than the Power Axe. And then for these other ones, it should be just like this, right? A little bit lower. But yeah, I think that makes sense, probably. And then we have the equivalent of the pearls, in a sense, the Spiked Helm and the Spiked Shield, which add 2 attack and defense as well. So, right, +1 and +2 to attack and defense. So that's interesting, right? That's more balanced. But now, I would say that, you could have the same consideration, the Black Pearl, or the White and Black Pearls. Those could be some sort of a compensation for the factions that don't favor getting spell power and knowledge. That's interesting. But when it comes to these, attack and defense being added, is that such a significant compensation for the Warlocks and Wizards, for example, that get a ton of spell power and knowledge, but maybe not so much attack and defense? I would say kind of no. They're a bit worse than the pearls. I mean, having pearls on a barbarian or a knight would be so much more significant than having just the +2 attack and defense to, a warlock, I would say, right? Still, +2 attack and defense, the problem is that it's not, when it comes to the pearls, you need both knowledge and spell power to, you can combine them to deal more damage or to cast more spells that are have more efficiency or efficacy, stuff like that, right? But when it comes to attack and defense, it's not like, you can combine them both at the same time necessarily, right? Only when it comes to retaliations or something like that, right? If you attack with some melee unit and you benefit from the extra attack, you deal more damage, but then when the opposing creature retaliates against you, you suffer less damage than normally because you have extra defense as well. Yeah, sure, but it's not quite the same type of combination, I would say. What if I have, you know, ranged units? Then I'm only kind of using the attack whenever I'm attacking, and maybe if I'm suffering some damage, there's some reduction going on as well, but it's not like, you know, you can combine these into, let's say, a conclusion that's like +4 to that final calculation. Overall, these are nice, but they're not the end-all be-all, I would say. So the +1 attack and +1 defense, I would say probably, of course, they're better than just +1 to any of them. But compared to the +2 defense or +2 attack, I would say, you know, I would still favor the attack more than the defense most of the time. So I would put this one a bit in, you know, in between the +2 attack and +2 defense. This is kind of in between, maybe. And the other one that adds to +2 to both, I would say in between these ones as well. But now that I think about it, you know, compared to the White Pearl, no, actually it makes sense. Yeah, the White Pearl better than this, the Spiked Helm, but not better than the one that adds 2 to defense and offense. Okay, that kind of makes sense. The next one is Lightning Helm, which halves all damage from lightning spells. And there are only 2 lightning spells, the Lightning Bolt and the Chain Lightning. Lightning Bolt deals 25x power to a singular target, and Chain Lightning deals 40x damage to the first target, and then it jumps 3 more times. So it jumps to the nearest guy that suffers 20x power in damage, then 10x, and then finally 5x. So the total amount of damage in the best case scenario would be 75x for the Chain Lightning. Which means that if you have the Lightning Helm, then the Lightning Bolt deals 12.5x power, so that's closer to just the Magic Arrow, so that's quite significant. The reduction is quite high. And also the Chain Lightning goes from 75x total damage to only 37.5. So that's already pretty significant. It's lower than what it would, so the total amount of damage would be lower than the damage dealt to that first target in normal circumstances. So that's pretty interesting. And also, you know, just to put things into perspective, with the damage reduction, the Chain Lightning would deal only the equivalent of a Cold Ray. So only 20x to the first target, then a Magic Arrow, half a Magic Arrow, and a fourth of a Magic Arrow, which is super insignificant anyway. So Lightning Helm is pretty good, right? Because whenever you're facing against Warlocks, Wizards, these guys that have a ton of spell power and knowledge, the lightning spells are pretty devastating, right? And there's pretty much no counter. You just start the turn, boom, it's Chain Lightning, boys, and it's you suffer quite a lot of damage. But having the Lightning Helm helps immensely for sure. It's as if you would reduce the spell power for these specific spells. You reduce the spell power of the opponent by half, to half. So that is quite significant. I like getting Lightning Helm, especially when I'm fighting against those factions. But if you're getting a Lightning Helm and your opponents are pretty much barbarians and knights that don't have those artifacts that compensate or that enable them to be spellcasters, maybe it's not going to be that significant. You know, there is some reasonable chance that Lightning Helm is not really going to help you that much. But that being said, another consideration is that how accessible these spells are. Meaning that, you know, Lightning Bolt is a second level spell. And if you get it from, you can get it obviously from those buildings that give you spells, but also you normally get it from a Mage Guild level 2. Now, there are 11 spells in the Mage Guild level 2 level, let's say, and you get 3 of them. Unless you're a wizard, then you have a library, you get 4. And the thing is, based on my calculations, the chance of getting a very specific spell in that Mage Guild level 2 would be 27% normally, and with the library, it's 36%. So I would say it's pretty accessible compared to other things. But Chain Lightning, on the other hand, is a level 4 spell, and it's not as accessible. There's no building that gives you, at least not in the original campaign, I'm not sure about the expansion, but there's no building that gives you Chain Lightning, that's one. So you can only get it from a Mage Guild level 4, which is costly first of all, and also there are 16 spells at the level 4 level, Also, you can check out the tier lists about the spells as well, but it's not as accessible because if you generate only 2 at that level, 3 with obviously with a library, if you only generate 2, the chance of getting a specific spell, getting exactly Chain Lightning out of those 2 slots, would be around 12.5%, 1 in 8. And if you have a library, I think it's, what, 18%, something like that. So it's not as accessible as the normal Lightning Bolt. So most of the time I would say that, honestly, you might just reduce only the Lightning Bolt damage, going from 25x to 12.5x most of the time. Obviously, if you can reduce a Chain Lightning, that's pretty strong. But how often does the opposition have Chain Lightning? Well, I don't know. Definitely not as often as Lightning Bolt. So anyway, I like getting the Helm for sure. And, well, here we go. Where do you put it compared to everything else? I would say probably, you know, better than the Ballista for sure, but compared to the defense, right? If you add +1 to defense to every one of your guys, is that more impactful than reducing that lightning damage that may happen whenever you're fighting very specific factions? How do you even rank this, really? But I would say probably, yeah, it's pretty defensive, this one. And potentially even better than the +1. I mean, I'm just thinking about, well, if I get a random artifact from, you know, sometimes you can go for a treasure chest and it gives you some random artifact that you didn't expect. How happy would I be with these guys, right, that adds +1 attack or +1 defense? And how happy, by comparison, would I be with the Lightning Helm? I would say this is way more impactful, probably. But more impactful than +2 defense. Already we're getting into a ridiculous situation. But +2 defense is more reliable. It is passive. It happens all the time. This one depends on what the enemy has, what spells the enemy has, plus what spells the enemy chooses to use, how much spell power and knowledge the enemy has. Whereas +2 defense, that's always gonna be important. Maybe here, just B+, perhaps. I would still think that, you know, these ones are a little bit better, right? This is just a bit situational because it counters, not even fully countering, but it reduces a very specific set of spells, and there are only 2. But whenever you can actually use it, it's pretty good. But I wouldn't necessarily rank them based on the best possible scenario, because then almost everything could be a miss. I mean, this one, I've ranked it so low, the Ballista, because it's situational. But imagine if I would just say, well, whenever you're attacking castle walls, it's really strong, so I would put it at an S. That's kind of ridiculous, you know. That being said, we have the Fire Cloak now, halves the damage from fire spells. So, kind of the same consideration, you know. How often do you get these fire spells? Well, the only 2 ones are Fireball and Fire Blast. And the Fireball just deals 10x damage, and it targets 7 hexes. So whoever is included in those 7 hexes gets 10x damage onto them, right? And it doesn't if you have a unit that occupies 2 hexes and both hexes are hit by a Fireball or Fire Blast, there's not double damage going on there. It's not like they suffer 20x. No, it's still 10x. It only matters if they are hit, not how many hexes are hit, right? So yeah, and the best case scenario, somehow, if the enemies cluster so much that you have 5 units within those 7 hexes, but that's pretty insane. You would deal 50x damage. So that's interesting. And the Fire Blast, for example, is targeting a bigger area, so it's 19 hexes. So it's more likely that it would deal more damage than the Fireball, for example. Now, the issue is that these spells are not that accessible, because the Fireball is a level 3 spell, and the Fire Blast is a level 4 spell, which means that there's the same percentage, there's the same chance of getting either one of them, because there are 16 spells at the level 3 Mage Guild, and 16 spells as well at the level 4 level. So that means it's, again, what is like 12.5% chance of getting Fireball or Fire Blast as well. But the Fireball can still be accessed through one of those shrines of the third circle that may or may not appear or exist on the map, right? And then it's just completely random out of 16 spells, so that means it's like a 6% chance of getting it from there. Okay, so these are not as accessible as the Lightning Bolt, for sure. The Fire Blast is just as accessible as the Chain Lightning, right? So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Fire spells are kind of rare, and the unfortunate part is that they just don't deal that much damage. As I said, in the best case scenario, maybe you deal 50x power, but spread onto every unit, which means that that's as if you would... the equivalent would be like a death wave, right? Or a holy word, you know. So is that so significant? Or even easier, just a mass magic arrow. Is that so significant? Well, not really, but imagine having all that damage, going from a mass magic arrow to a mass half a magic arrow. Is that such a game changer? Is that so, like, is that the difference between you winning a game or a battle and you losing it? I don't think so, right? Fire spells just don't deal that much damage to justify having a specific artifact that's having that damage, right? There's an opportunity cost going on as well. If you would have somehow, like in Heroes 3, where you can have as many artifacts as you want, but you can still choose to equip some at some points, or to just keep them in the inventory while they are inactive, then sure. But in Heroes 2, now you have just a limited amount of artifacts, and unless you have another hero ready to take some that are useless, it's just a wasted slot, I would say. Fire Cloak, kind of a meme artifact, I would say. It's pretty situational to really benefit from this, only if, but this is highly circumstantial, only if, let's say, you have a lot of knowledge, a lot of spell power, and you got, from the Mage Guild level 5, you got a, what's it called? A Summon Water Elemental, which is vulnerable to fire spells. Okay, maybe, but even then, even if they're vulnerable, which means that they suffer double damage, even that double damage is just, what, 20x? That's a Cold Ray. Is equivalent. That's not that significant, right? So unless you have created like 5 water elementals, and with a Fire Blast, you deal so much more damage, like a mass Cold Ray onto them, right? In terms of damage, of course, because they're immune to Cold Ray. But I mean, is that so significant, you know, to go for a Fire Cloak plus that Summon Water Elemental? I mean, maybe, I guess, but that's highly, highly circumstantial. So already, if I'm trying this hard to make it work, it's probably not that great. So the Fire Cloak, well, is one of the more useless artifacts, I would say. Most of the time you get it and you don't benefit from it almost at all. Now, obviously it depends on who's the opponent, right? I, 99% of the time, play against the AI, and the AI doesn't really favor casting Fireball or something like that, because, well, the AI in Heroes of Might and Magic 2 is a little bit rudimentary, right? If it would be a more modern AI, maybe it would be more interesting, but I would say it's kind of a D. I'm sorry, but I don't like the Fire Cloak. It's always a disappointment whenever it's generated, or whenever I get it from a treasure chest or something like that. It's kind of bad. Then we have the Ice Cloak, which halves all damage from ice spells. Now, the ice spells, well, one ice spell would be more accessible. So the ice spells are Cold Ray, 20x damage onto a single target, and Cold Ring, which is the equivalent of a Fireball, but it spares the center hex, right? So it's kind of a defensive spell. If you have a creature that only occupies 1 hex and is surrounded by a lot of enemies, you Cold Ring just to damage all of those guys for 10x damage per creature hit. So yeah, well, the thing is, the Cold Ray is just a level 2 spell, so it's as accessible as a Lightning Bolt. Cold Ray, a lot of the time you will have to face a Cold Ray, so that is pretty interesting. So you would reduce that damage from 20x to 10x, so you turn a Cold Ray into a Magic Arrow, which could be interesting. So I would say the Ice Cloak is better than the Fire Cloak, just because it's more probable that you would have to face the Cold Ray. Cold Ring is just kind of the same as the Fireball, so I would say between them, that is an insignificant comparison, right? It's just Ice Cloak is better, just because of the cold rays accessibility. So I would put it above the fire cloak, but is this super significant? I mean, maybe, but you know, it's not as ridiculous as the lightning one, right? This helm, you know, can counter or significantly reduce the damage from the chained lightning, which is super strong, even though it's more situational, right? And also the lightning bolt deals more damage. You would probably, you know, think of the ice cloak being closer to this one in the early game, but then it kind of loses, or this one gains more value because of the chained lightning possibility, right? So I would still maybe put it at a C, something like that. It's probably better than the siege one because getting attacked by a cold ray is not as rare, I would say. So probably like this, but I think this makes sense. It's not the best one out there. It's not like most of the time I wish, oh, if only I would have had an ice cloak, boys, then I would have won. I'm not sure about that. Maybe not. Then we have the ones that increase knowledge, minor scroll, actually minor, major, superior, and foremost, adding +2, 3, 4, and 5 respectively. Okay, so knowledge is pretty important, of course, but unfortunately knowledge depends very much on spell power, because if you have a lot of knowledge but one spell power, that's insignificant pretty much, because you can't do much with it. I've seen so many times, especially in the campaign, you fight against some barbarians that have a lot of these artifacts, but they have 1 spell power and 10 knowledge, and they just cast Bless every once in a while, which doesn't even, you know, I mean, yeah, it lasts 1 turn only because of the spell power, and they just have to keep casting it. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess you can do it for, what, 30, you can do it 33 times because you have so much knowledge, but you are relying on spell power as well. So these knowledge ones, you know, are not as great as the spell power ones for sure, and you hit diminishing returns relatively quickly. Once you get like 10 knowledge, adding such an artifact is kind of insignificant, I would say. I mean, I would rather keep a slot open in my inventory for another type of artifact if I already have satisfied the requirement for most spells to be cast at least 3 times or something like that. Even if I would summon water elementals or something like that for 30 mana each, I wouldn't really go for as much knowledge as possible. Probably not, but you know, I haven't played every single possible scenario to really know. But knowledge is good, but not as great as spell power. You know, knowledge is not going to help you much if you don't have the spell power. On the flip side, the attack and defense skills could help you clearly. So I would say, you know, +5 knowledge is quite strong for sure. So I'd put it just maybe a little bit below the ones that increase 2 spell power. I still do believe that +5 knowledge is worse than +2 spell power, which sounds kind of crazy, but I do believe that it might be true. Okay, and but still maybe better than the White Pearl that just gives +1 knowledge and +1 spell power. Maybe you sacrifice that 1 spell power for way more knowledge, but still. And the other ones, +4 knowledge, probably still around here. But then when you get like +3 and +2, actually, now that I think about it, maybe knowledge even worse than the +3 attack, perhaps, right? I mean, with knowledge, there's some chance it will be useless. +3 attack is never useless, never. So yeah, even though it's 5, yeah, I mean, I think it's a deliberate choice by the developers for sure, right? There's no spell that increases, there's no artifact that increases spell power by 5. Of course, that's by design probably. There's no artifact that increases attack not even by 4, which means that probably the developers thought that attack is actually more impactful than the spell power, perhaps, maybe, and knowledge less impactful than each of them. So anyway, yeah, it's difficult to really rank these ones at this point, but maybe just keep them in order, these ones, but +2 knowledge, way less impactful than the White Pearl, for sure. +2 knowledge or +2 attack. I still favor the attack and the defense, honestly. Knowledge, way lower. The +2. +3, still no lower. Honestly, I would say still lower, the knowledge. because these ones affect everybody. These ones are beneficial for everybody. These other ones, maybe they could be useless at some, sometimes, and they're not so significant even for the spellcasters. So, yeah. Maybe only if you combine them somehow with the ones that increase spell power specifically, but I don't know. I think this would make sense, but the ones that increase +5 and +4, they're kind of too high up there, I would say. Maybe, even lower than this. Kind of something like this. It's just a little bit better than the Pearl, but not greater than +3 to attack or defense. Yeah, I think something like this, but I'm not sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure that, let's say tomorrow I might have a different idea. So, I don't know. Then we have the ones that increase luck by 1. The Clover, Coin, Horseshoe, and the Rabbit's Foot. And all of them increase luck by 1. Because anything more than that would have been insane, man. So luck just deals double damage, right? So the more luck you have, the higher the likelihood that any one of your stacks would deal double damage for 1 attack. And it can even be combined with morale for sure. So that is, and also you can get lucky even with the ranged units that have 2 shots, like the Rangers and the Grand Elves, right? They shoot 2 times in the same turn, and you could get lucky both times, I'm pretty sure. You can even get good morale as well, and with the good morale, you get lucky yet again and again. So yeah, +1 luck, pretty significant for sure. Luck is one of those things that's quite impactful. Double damage is always a good thing. And it's nice that we have 4 possible artifacts that increase this stat. Now, yet again, how impactful is that, really? I mean, let's just say, compared to these ones, the +1 attack that just adds 10% maybe, or yeah, 10% to that final modifier if you already have more attack, or just a +5 if there was some damage reduction going on. 10% is not that significant in the best case scenario, but double damage is double damage. It's like 100% more, but it is really dependent on whatever the random number generator gave you, right? If you have a bigger range and you have not been affected by Bless or Curse, then it's random, whatever damage you would deal, and the double damage just, doubles whatever that number would be. So still, luck is quite impactful, I would say. Luck could be the difference between you winning a game and losing a game, and it affects everybody, for sure. Luck is always a good idea. You would never be disappointed getting luck. So that already would mean that it's pretty high up there. Now, +1, I'm not sure what the calculation is or what the percentage is. If you have like 0 luck, there's a 0% chance you're getting lucky. But if you have +1, what is the chance? Not sure. And what is the maximum though? If you get all of these, plus the luck secondary skill, +3, right, the expert one, could you get +7 luck? I'm not sure. Maybe, maybe not. Plus those buildings that give you extra luck as well. Is that possible? What's the maximum number of luck that you could get? I don't know. But still, luck is pretty nice. But you can't quite control its effect, right? You might get lucky whenever you are attacking with an insignificant stack. Let's say you have like 3 halflings for whatever reason and 10 titans, and the halflings get lucky, but the titans don't. That's pretty bad. But yeah, you can still try to manipulate it in some way, right? But, I mean, never attack with very insignificant stacks or something like that, but, it's you can't quite control whenever you're gonna get lucky, even if the chance is gonna be high. So luck should be around an A, probably, but it highly depends on what your army is composed of, right? If you have a very significant number of units, then getting lucky deals an insane amount of damage. Could be, in the best case scenario, could be even better than these +2 spell power ones. But in the worst case scenario, it might be pretty insignificant. So anyway, I like luck quite a lot. So I would put it, honestly, maybe this is debatable, but maybe people are not going to agree, but I would put luck very high up there. Very high. A+, maybe. Potentially even an S. But these ones, I like the control. they offer, right? With these, it's more predictable what the effect is going to be. With luck, well, we'll see. I don't know. But yeah, it's just +1 luck, but it enables you to get lucky if you don't have that secondary skill or you haven't visited any building that gives you more luck. I like the possibility of dealing complete double damage. That's double damage. In order for you to secure double damage, you would have to have +10 attack or something like that, which is quite ridiculous, right? But +10 attack would mean pretty much double damage every single time, right? Every single time you attack, whereas luck happens sometimes. So, you know, again, in some situations, something is better than something else, but the reverse might be true in other circumstances. So I don't know, but I like luck quite a lot, so I would put it very high up there. I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense, but let me know what you think in the comments. Or maybe, you know, if I think about it, perhaps just lower than the spell power ones, because with these ones, you can choose what the effect would be, and you might have a significant advantage. Luck, +1 luck, maybe if you get super unlucky and the RNG doesn't favor you, it might be kind of useless, but +2 spell power is never useless because it's guaranteed extra duration or damage or whatever effectiveness. Maybe. Now, the ones that increase gold per day, right? The Endless Purse of Gold, Endless Bag of Gold, and the Endless Sack of Gold, giving you 500 extra gold per day, 750, or 1,000, right? So, to put things into perspective, the 500 one is the equivalent of an expert estates on the guy, right? And the Endless Sack of Gold, the equivalent of a gold mine, which is insanely strong, of course. These are fantastic, right? Gold is extremely important. With gold, you can buy off everything you have, every unit that's available to you. Well, there's some cost, some resources as well, but still, yeah, having more gold is never a bad idea. And also, if you have diplomacy, you can bribe some army camps to join you, which will always cost only money. So that's pretty good. And also, well, this is more situational, but if you want to surrender sometimes and just avoid losing a hero, gold is going to help in that situation as well. But gold is, you know, I mean, resources in general, but gold is extremely important, obviously. Without gold, it's pretty much forfeit. Most of the time, you won't do much if you don't have a lot of production in this sense. Now, how do you rank this compared to the ones that are more important in battles? Because, you know, I would say, you know, gold enables you to do everything, so it might be the best thing out there, right? Which is a capitalist thing to say, probably, but what are you going to do, right? I would say gold is the most impactful thing. If you get all of these, right, even estates, maybe the expert estates less than the spell power one, because, you know, you could argue that, you know, if you have a lot of spell power and you start winning a lot of battles, you deter the enemy from getting other resources, so that compounds into you winning more, as opposed to the gold that only gets you an extra army, but, you know, it depends if that army is going to be significant enough for you to win a battle and whatever, right? But I can't possibly think of every single situation imaginable, but nah, you know, everyone that increases gold by that much must be probably an S for sure. But again, it's kind of a bit nonsensical because these affect everything else in the game, and these ones are just battle-specific ones. Or, well, even adventure spells can benefit from spell power, like, for example, Haunt, which is pretty interesting, or the Summon Guardians, if you choose to use that, but I wouldn't recommend it. Check out the level 5 spells tier list for more information about that, but still. And then we have the ones that give you +1 of each resource per day. So it's the Endless Cord of Wood, the Endless Card of Ore, Endless Vial of Mercury, Endless Pouch of Crystal, Endless Pouch of Sulfur, and Endless Pouch of Gems. Obviously giving 1 each day. So these are pretty nice, right? Having more resources, again, a pretty good idea. And it really depends on who is gonna benefit from this, right? Obviously, all these resources, Mercury, Crystal, and Sulfur, and Gems, are important for the mage guilds. And as I said, spells are super important, so getting more spells is quite impactful, quite important. Wood and ore are involved in almost every building, so these are important, but these are way more accessible. So you know, maybe I would put these below the other ones. And also, depending on the faction, some resources are better than others, right? Mercury is important for, what is it, like the, let me see, the sorceress especially, because she needs Mercury for the phoenixes. Crystal is important for, well, the barbarians, for Cyclopes, and for the knight castle to get the cathedral as well. But then it's not as important afterwards, because crusaders and paladins only cost gold. Sulfur, important for getting the mausoleum, I think, for the necromancers, and also for dragons, obviously, on the warlocks, and gems for the titans on the wizard faction as well, and genies and whatever, right? So still, I would say that potentially, because of how strong some factions are compared to others, I would still say, you know, this is kind of ridiculous to rank, but I would say probably Crystal is lower than these other resources, and Wood and Ore are lower than every one of these four, right? So resources are so important that I would put them high up there. But yet again, how do you rank this? I don't know. But I would say the resource ones should go comfortably in the, you know, below the gold, right? Gold can be used to transfer within a marketplace or trading post to get anything else. These ones, you know, we would have to, you know, you would have to wait quite a while to be able to convert these into money or something like that, but that's kind of crazy. So anyway, I'll put these pretty high up there, and the Wood and Ore specifically just below. Probably Ore is better because you can get turrets with it. Wood, maybe not as much, right? And what did I say? The crystal one should be lower. I think this is the crystal one, maybe lower than the other ones, and that would be it. But yet again, these are not going to help you as much. You know, I mean, if you don't have a significant army, you have a lot of knowledge, don't have spell power, obviously the Arcane Necklace is going to be way better than these other dudes. I mean, what are you going to do with your massive amount of crystals if you don't have an army and no spell power? They're going to be destroyed, right? But, you know, I would say, you know, gold, I'm always happy to get them, but these other resources, that's situational. Maybe just because of this, right? Because of how much the other artifacts have an impact on each battle, and how much they can dictate if you're going to survive or not. These ones are probably going to be a bit lower just because, right? +1, I mean, what are you going to do with +1 wood per day as opposed to the other ones, right? I mean, if you could choose, you would never choose these ones unless your opponents are very far away or you are already winning, but you would go for the spell power and stuff like that. So because of this, let me just honestly, yeah, let me just put them just intuitively maybe below the, let's say, the lightning helm, which is significant sometimes. But I don't know, it's I do understand that it's getting a bit nonsensical for sure, but probably something like this, right? Maybe even the Wood and Ore, so insignificant that maybe below the defense ones, but it's kind of stupid. It's kind of stupid at this point, but I don't know. To me, it makes sense at this point, but I might disagree with myself in the future. I don't know. The next ones are the only artifacts that have a complete negative effect, and these are just there to throw a spanner in the works, in a sense, right? Especially whenever you're getting a random artifact from a treasure chest or a sea chest or something like that, and you get the Fistman of Misfortune, -2 morale. Not even, they went so hard, it's not even -1, it's -2, which is completely devastating, for sure. Hideous Mask prevents all wandering monsters from joining your hero. Maybe not as important, you know, sometimes you can get some followers joining you for no money, but yeah, I'm not sure if this is a counter to diplomacy. I haven't tested this at all, but that's because, you know, whenever I get the Hideous Mask, I just dismiss that hero, or just move the artifact to an insignificant hero and dismiss them, and yeah, that's I never even I've never even thought of testing them because it's clear that they're pretty bad. And also the Tax Leon costs you 250 per turn. So that's like a negative, you know, reverse advanced estates, I think. right? So that's pretty bad, obviously. So you get rid of these as fast as possible, and unfortunately you lose some value because you need to dismiss a hero. But the fortunate part is that apparently the AI favors recruiting a hero that has some artifact on them. You know, which means that, you know, heroes never die, so whenever you dismiss a hero or he gets destroyed in combat, then there's some chance that they will show up and to be able to be hired at whatever castle. Not necessarily yours, it could be the opposition that gets one of your previous heroes, right? So the thing is that if you dismiss a hero that has one of these bad artifacts, the AI will probably favor getting that hero as opposed to anybody else, right? Which means that you know, it's a delayed potential benefit for you. You get the Fistman of Misfortune, yeah, I lose some value because I need to dismiss a hero, but, or maybe just keep this one on a hero that I never really use for combat, so maybe it doesn't matter then. But still, if I dismiss the hero, yeah, I lose some value because of that, but there is a potential benefit in the future if the enemy gets it and it doesn't realize that it's not great, okay? So that could happen. You could exploit this in some way, but, you know, these are clearly made in such a way to make it more difficult for you, or to just have some sort of bad RNG possibilities, of course. So these are clearly super bad. So bad that I would say we should create an actual F category and put these ones right here. I would say the tax lien is way worse because you lose money each day. 250 per day is insane, right? It's just the equivalent of reverse 2 statues or something like that, which is kind of a ridiculous connection to make, but, you know, you get what I mean. It's not great at all. The Fistman of Misfortune, -2 morale is quite impactful, but, you know, you can still kind of control if you're gonna be affected by it or not. But imagine if you're very far, very deep into enemy territory with your strongest hero, you get the Fistman of Misfortune from a random chest or something like that, and you can't get back to your castle, or you can't meet up with a secondary hero in a timely manner, and you would need to fight somebody really quickly. Then it's gonna be quite problematic. Obviously, you can compensate with that -2 morale with at least advanced leadership, or some combination of you know, having visited some building that increases your morale for the next battle, or another artifact that increases morale, right? Because those exist as well. Or just being a wizard somehow and having only wizard units, at least 2 units or stacks that are wizards, and having nothing else, and then you get +1 morale, which can compensate for this, but it's a pretty bad one as well. And the other one, I would say, is, well, actually, you know what? No, actually, it's the reverse here. We should, the tax lien is so bad that it should be the, the worst one, right? The last one, I would say, right? And this one is not as impactful. Maybe you could still win a game easily with this one on your hero, but, you know, realistically, you couldn't have known if some random army camp would have joined you or not while having this one. You couldn't have known. But -2 morale, super significant in the battle, and this one just destroys you economically for sure. It's just obviously just the counterpart to these super significant artifacts that give you money. This one obviously is on the complete other side of the spectrum. The next ones increase morale by 1, so exactly like the luck. You know, morale is so significant that it would have been crazy to have +2 morale. Just to make it clear that the Fistman of Misfortune is completely broken and horrible. But yeah, we have the Medal of Courage, Medal of Distinction, then Honor and Valor as well, +1 morale. Now, of course, something that I forgot to mention is that the morale doesn't affect the Necromancers. So if you're a Necromancer, you got one of these, well, that's pretty unlucky, I would say, but at least you keep them such that the enemies that are not Necromancers can't use them. That's pretty good as well. And also the Fistman of Misfortune, you're immune to its effect if you're a Necromancer, so hey, maybe you have that going for you. But anyway, morale is pretty good. It's on par with luck in a sense. Morale just gives you your unit another turn. So that could be interesting as well, because sometimes, there are many possibilities here, but most of the time, you just deal another blow to the opposition, and you can still choose, right? You maybe attack somebody, you deal a significant amount of damage, now that stack is either destroyed or is now insignificant, so when you get morale, you can choose to attack somebody else. That could be very nice, as opposed to luck that deals double damage, and that's in the same exact situation, you would there would be some overkill going on, right? So that's one extra benefit for the morale compared to luck, for example. But other times, luck would be more significant if you just deal double damage, a lot of damage onto some stack, and then you destroy it so significantly that their retaliation is not going to be as impactful. Whereas with morale, yeah, you attack once, then a retaliation is quite strong, and then, yeah, maybe you attack again. There's no retaliation afterwards, but still, the damage has been done onto your guy. So, yeah, and also morale, even though you attack twice, that doesn't mean you deal double damage necessarily as the luck. Again, that consideration. You have a range of damage, right? It depends on the RNG, unless you have a curse or a bless going on, right? But if it's RNG based, right, you generate some random base damage, right, value, and then with luck, you deal 2 times that. With morale, it's a random generation 2 times, right? You deal the first blow, right, which is going to be randomly generated, right? But then the second one might be luckier or less lucky as well. So it depends, right? It really depends. Morale is interesting because it gives you the possibility to move as well. Like, for example, if you are a ranged unit and somebody is attacking you, maybe, but you can't really control this because you can't predict whenever you're going to get lucky and get to the morale boost. But you can. There's many times I've had this happen, especially on that ranged only campaign, which you can see on the channel as well after this video. But sometimes you run away and then you get good morale, so you can also shoot afterwards. That's pretty good as well. Yeah, morale just helps you with the movement as well, especially if you have like a very slow unit. Even if you cast haste, it's still kind of slow. With morale, you get closer to the opposition, so that's pretty nice as well. So yeah, it's debatable if morale or luck would be better overall, because there are situations in which one is better than the other, but the reverse is true as well. But yeah, I like morale. It should be relatively close to luck. I would say, I prefer luck to morale, but most of the time, but, maybe that's just me. So I would say all the medals should be lower than the luck ones, but still pretty close. Now it's time for the ones that increase movement over land or sea. So we have the Sailor's Astrolabe, which increases your movement over sea by 10 squares, which is quite significant, of course. True Compass increases your movement over land and sea by 5 squares each, based on normal terrain for land. So, for example, if you're going on snow, then the penalty is going to affect this extra movement as well, which is going to be a bit problematic. Also, Nomad's Boots increases your movement over land by 6 squares, so just 1 more over this, but you lose the sea advantage as well. But most maps are not... or don't contain water. So, I would have said maybe the Nomad boots should have been more significant, like maybe 8 squares or 7 squares or something like that, but maybe that's so strong on land that maybe, the developers knew what they were doing. And the Traveler's Boots increases your movement over land by 3 squares based on normal terrain. So this is a way, this has the half of this, the Nomad Boots' effect. Okay, so obviously, logistics as a secondary skill is extremely important. I've ranked it at S, and that's a tier list about secondary skills. So having more movement is extremely important for sure, because you get to resources faster. You can run away from an enemy that doesn't have as much movement as you, and essentially they will never catch up to you unless they have some dimension door going on or whatever. But yeah, movement is extremely important, for sure. But I would say that because most maps are not really containing water, the Sailor's Astrolabe, unfortunately, is going to be useless a lot of the time, because the game just doesn't really seem to take this into account. Like, there's no condition like, if map doesn't contain water, then never generate Astrolabe. No, that's not what happens. Or even the True Compass, right? It's entirely possible to be on a map that's landlocked and generating true compass, as opposed to, I don't know, the Nomad boots that would have given you just a little bit more movement, and having more movement on sea would be useless on that in that mission, right? So this is a bit difficult to rank because, when it comes to maps that have sea, Astrolabe is pretty strong. But how should you even do this? Like, in this situation, I would rank it in the best possible case scenario, maybe, just to be as charitable as possible. But most of the time, no, actually, no, never mind that. I'll say, movement is quite important for sure, and it can make you survive many times. I would say movement is quite super strong, perhaps not as much as gold, because even if you're slow, but you have a lot of army, it doesn't really matter that much. But the fast guy that has an insignificant army might not win in the end. So I would just put these perhaps, maybe below these guys, because these are so strong. Maybe, yeah. These guys are super impactful, for sure, but the movement is also great. It must be an S for sure. So the Nomad boots +6, then +5 for land and sea, +3 for land, and the Astrolabe situational. Unfortunately, these ones you will always benefit from them because there's no map that's only sea. Well, is there a map that's only sea? Well, I don't think so. I can imagine a map that only has castles and some mines, but everything else is sea based. And everybody fights on a boat. I don't know. Maybe that exists, but I've never seen it. But anyway, this one is potentially useless. That's the biggest issue. So I really don't like this. And yeah, it gives you some advantage whenever you're on a boat. But even so, it depends on the map as well. Because some maps that can contain water, it's not like the water area is so large that you would need so much movement to be able to travel. I don't know about this. I would say it's one of the more useless artifacts that you could get. Most of the time, it's there's no point. So maybe, honestly, just because it's so situational, maybe a D. It's just useless almost all the time. It is what it is, but that's only because most maps are not related to water. The next one is the Power Ring, which adds +2 extra spell point generation per day. So it's like a mysticism in a sense. I think it's the equivalent of an advanced... No, is it advanced mysticism or basic? I think basic, actually. It's +2, +3, and +4. It's probably basic mysticism, but it also combines with it. If you have expert mysticism +4 spell power per day, plus the Power Ring, that is pretty significant, right? So 6 extra spell points. That means you regenerate a blind per turn. That's not too bad. Of course, but it's not the most exciting artifact out there. Is it so significant? Well, it depends again on the faction. Like, for example, you're a barbarian, let's say. You have 1 knowledge, maybe some spell power or something, but maybe let's just go for the classic example. 1 spell power, 1 knowledge. +2 extra spell point regeneration per day could be interesting because realistically, you would only cast lower spells that cost that are pretty cheap, like Bless, Curse, Bloodlust, which are all these spells are quite significant, but they don't cost that much. So as a barbarian / knight, you would probably never go for mysticism unless your choice is mysticism or navigation on a landlocked map, or scouting, or something that you would not use that much. So this could compensate for that and could give you the possibility to replenish your very few spell points, such that you could cast all these cheap spells more often. So that's interesting as well. But for somebody that has a ton of knowledge, for example, if you have 100 knowledge, +2 extra spell point regeneration, that's kind of ridiculous. What are you going to do with that? I think this one would be more impactful in the early game for sure, and it helps these other factions that that are not really spellcasters naturally. But Power Ring is not super strong. So I would say, maybe a D or a C, potentially, right? I would still always prefer wood and ore, or the resources, or a +1 attack, +1 defense, potentially. Even though, obviously, if, in the situation where you ran out of mana but with the power ring, you regenerate it in such a way that in your next battle, you can't afford to cast a bless. That is the difference between you winning that game and not. I mean, I guess, but still, you know, it's probably better than the, well, I mean, this is so much more impactful in the best case scenario. This one, even in the best case scenario, it's not so strong, maybe lower. And compared to the Fire Cloak, already it's a pretty bad situation whenever you need to compare yourself to such an insignificant artifact. But, maybe better. I don't know. This one could be useless all the time. This one is not useless necessarily, but, you know, it really depends on the situation. Then the Evil Eye, cost of curse spells reduced by half, rounded up. I'm not sure if it's rounded up, honestly, because, you know, for example, the Snake Ring, which is the same thing, but affecting Bless. I'm pretty sure I've had on Sister Eliza the Snake Ring. Sister Eliza had Bless initially. Bless costs 3, and it got reduced to 1 as a cost. So I don't think it's rounded up at all. But still, whatever. It's just, so you have Curse and Bless, which cost 3. So they get reduced to only 1. But that's not really that significant. 1 as opposed to 3, I don't know. Maybe in the early game when you're struggling to cast a lot of spells because you don't have the knowledge, or as well, yeah, if you don't have the power ring or whatever, and no mysticism as well, no wells, yeah, maybe it could be impactful, but it's not really that great. But the mass versions of these spells are reduced significantly, because the mass curse or mass bless, they cost 12. Normally, so they would cost 6 instead. So that's the equivalent of a blind or a cold ring. So that is quite interesting for sure. But or the equivalent of a cure, right? So if you cast mass curse on the guys, on the opponents, and they go for a cure, yeah, it's pretty significant, because mass cure or mass dispel are pretty costly spells. They cost like 15 and 12 respectively. So if you cast a mass curse and you keep spamming it, forcing the enemy to go for mass dispel or mass cure, then they run out of mana way quicker than you, and from that point onwards, every single spell that you would cast wouldn't have a counter. So you could finally go for that final mass curse that actually impacts everybody, if there's anybody left in the battle. So anyway, these are pretty interesting as well. But again, Necromancers are immune to these ones. Some units, I think, are immune to, well, like the Crusader is immune to Curse, for example. But Curse and Bless are one of the best spells in the game, for sure. So reducing their cost is interesting and important, for sure. But yet again, unless you have Mass Curse or Mass Bless, these artifacts don't matter that much. And again, the same consideration as whenever I talked about the Fire Cloak, Ice Cloak, whatever. Mass Curse and Mass Bless, these are level 3 spells as far as I know, which means that the chance of getting one of them specifically would be, what, 1 in 8, 12.5%, right? So, well, if you need to get both of them, or what is the chance of not getting any of them? Here we go. We're bringing the trusty paint again. So at the Mage Guild level 3, we have 2 slots, right, and 16 spells. And we're interested in these 2, Mass Curse and Mass Bless, right? So what are the chances of not getting either one of them? Well, it would be, what, like 14 over 16 for the first slot? And then for the second slot as well, to not get any of them, you would get 13 over 15, right? That's the chance of not getting any of them from your Mage Guild level 3, provided you don't have a library, right? And the chance of getting one of them would be 1 minus this thing right here. So what is that? What does that equate to? Let me see. So 14 times 13 divided by 16 and divided by 15 yet again. That's 75. So there's a 75%, so 76% chance of not getting any of them, right? And the reverse. So 24% chance of getting one of them only. And getting both, specifically both, would be pretty much like 2 over 16 times 1 over 15, I'm pretty sure, right? That should be the chance of getting both somehow, but I've never seen that. But anyway, it's like 1 in 8 times 1 in 15. That's already pretty ridiculous, right? So the chances of getting either one of them was 24%, right? So which is not that bad, right? It's closer to getting a cold ray or a lightning bolt, right? But the chance of getting both is ridiculously low for sure. Yeah, so because of this, 24% chance. Yeah, I would say these are kind of on par with the Ice Cloak in a sense, right? Yeah, maybe. The chance of actually using these things would be like 24%, even though, like, imagine the scenario in which you get Evil Eye, but your Mage Guild generated Mass Bless instead. What are you going to do with that? Or, yeah, the reverse as well. Difficult to rank this for sure, but they are impactful. Yeah, if they cost only 6, that's pretty strong. Mass Curse and Mass Bless for 6. That's quite nice. So how nice, though? Well, could be very impactful for sure. Potentially, well, compared to perhaps the Helm, I would say maybe a bit below the Helm. Maybe. I'm not sure. Again, highly situational. In some games, this might be the difference between life and death, or these ones, or the resources, or whatever, right? Of course, right? If you're, like, let's say a wizard, but you get the Mercury one, maybe it's not impactful. But if you're, a sorceress, you have Bless, or whatever, you generated Mass Bless from, whatever, the Shrine of the Third Circle, then maybe the Snake Ring is going to be better. So, but I would say maybe a B+. These are pretty nice, but only because of that cost reduction for the mass versions of those spells, indeed. Also, considering I was right with that probability, right? But maybe I made a wrong calculation. Maybe it's not completely random. I don't know, honestly. But from what I've tested, it kind of seems to be the case. Skull Cap. Cost of mind-influencing spells, Blind, Paralyze, Berserker, and Hypnotize, reduced by half. Rounded up, I don't think that's actually happening. I'm not sure. Like, Paralyze costs 9, because the rounding would only affect Paralyze and Hypnotize. So Blind is 6 mana normally, but Paralyze is 9, this is 12, and this is 15, right? So Paralyze could be either 4 mana or 5 if you have the Skull Cap. I don't know, but I'm guessing it's probably going to be 4, actually. It might be rounded down. And Hypnotize 7 or 8. Still, that makes them more significant. Like, if you have Paralyze for 4, that's pretty interesting, or even 5, right? You would go for Paralyze because it's the same effect as Blind, for example, and it also affects Necromancers. Necromancers are immune to Blind and Berserker and Hypnotize, but not Paralyze. So that is interesting. But these are super controlling spells. Blind and Paralyze are one of the best spells, or ones of the best spells in the whole game, right? Provided you can actually use them. Paralyze is a little bit worse normally because it costs more, but Blind, ensures half retaliation whenever you're attacking the blinded creature with a melee unit, but Paralyze ensures no retaliation for that turn, which is interesting as well. Berserker is situational because, it costs a lot. Normally it's 12, but here it would be 6, so that's interesting. It makes it a bit more viable, and it doesn't rely on spell power at all. So Berserker can be cast onto a significant stack to be able to attack its nearest ally and deal quite a lot of damage, especially whenever that attacked creature would also retaliate. That would be very interesting. And Hypnotize is quite situational. I think people are sleeping on it a little bit, but still, it's not too strong anyway. But I would say that, it's kind of, what I've observed is that Hypnotize seems to be kind of a counter to Resurrection in a sense, right? So, but it costs so much that it's a bit difficult to use. You need to be very sure that you get some reasonable value from it. But with a Skull Cap, if the cost is going to be reduced to 7 or 8, depending on the rounding up or down, let's say 8, let's assume 8. 8 is not too bad, right? 8 is a little bit more than a Disrupting Ray, which you would go for many times. Hypnotize, the main benefit of it is that the hypnotized unit is going to be in your control until you attack with it. And unless the enemy casts a Dispel Magic or a Cure, or Anti-Magic, I guess, that unit is going to be in your control. The biggest drawback for Hypnotize is that it only affects a stack whose health is 25x your power, which is not that much. You need to significantly damage somebody to be able to hypnotize that creature. And that is problematic as well. And because it's just 25x power and health points, why wouldn't you just lightning bolt them, right? Which is the same amount of damage. Well, as I've said, it's probably because you need to deter the enemy from using resurrection on that unit or that stack, right? But more on that, if you're interested in that, I've discussed this. I've expanded more on this in that video about the level 5 spells. You can check out that tier list as well. But yeah, Skullcap, I like Skullcap for sure. Imagine casting Blind for 3 mana only. That's the biggest benefit it provides, or Paralyze for 4 or 5. That's pretty good. Even Berserker or Hypnotize, I would use Hypnotize every once in a while. It depends, right? The AI uses, if the AI has, let's say, Resurrection or Resurrection True, yeah, it will use it for sure. So you can do this, for example, against those. Animate Dead, unfortunately, you can't counter Animate Dead with Hypnotize because these guys are immune. But still, or here we go. Another thing that I didn't mention in that video. What if you hypnotize a genie? That's the thing. Oh, a genie, man. I don't think, or let me check the manual. You know it's getting serious whenever you're bringing up the manual. Yeah, genies don't seem to be immune to mind-affecting spells, as opposed to the elementals, for example, or whatever, right? So, yeah. So that is pretty nice, right? Imagine hypnotizing a genie, then attacking the biggest stack that the enemy has, and having that stack, just because of the genies. Or even Berserker, but then it's not that much in your control, but still. Yeah, and genies, most of the time, the opponent is not going to have like 20 genies or something like that. So that means that essentially, 50 hit points per genie. That means that even if the guy would have like 4 genies, which would be probably the average that you would get from a lamp, 4 genies, that's 200 hit points. So how much spell power do you need to be able to control all of the genies? 8, right? 8 spell power. That's not unreasonable. So maybe that as well. Maybe it's a counter to genies in a sense, or some, well, counter. Yeah, counter. Anyway, I like Skullcap for sure. So that would mean it would be pretty up there. I like it more than the ones that increase Bless or Curse or something like that, because it affects more than one spell. If it would have been just, oh, you're blind, is going to be reduced. What if I don't get blind? Well, it's problematic. Or just only Paralyze, only Berserker. Well, only Berserker, that's pretty insignificant maybe. Or only Hypnotize, that's crazy. But because it affects all of those guys, that's quite significant, for sure. Even though I would say that, in general, Curse and Bless are better than each one of these, but it depends on the situation. Skullcap, how important is it? It lets you cast or control the battlefield easier, so that is quite good. Very good, actually. And it's a compensation for a lack of knowledge, for example, because it doesn't matter how much you reduce the cost if you have like 200 knowledge or 20 knowledge or something like that, 200 spell points. It doesn't really matter if you reduce the cost, because realistically, you're rich anyway. It doesn't matter. So, yeah, maybe more beneficial than these guys that increase knowledge ever so slightly, +2, +3, then defense, whatever. Well, here we go. This is the question, actually. Better than the White Pearl. Actually, +1 spell power, +1 knowledge. It's problematic here because, again, there's a situation in which, even though the cost is lower, if your spell power is low enough, those spells won't last too much. That's the biggest issue. Except for Berserker and Hypnotize. Hypnotize, you could make it last as long as you want if you don't attack with that hypnotized unit. Berserker, it depends on how far away the nearest creature would be to the berserked unit. But Blind and Paralyze, unfortunately, their duration is just based on spell power. It's 1 round per power. If you don't have a lot of power, what are you going to do, right? Even though the cost is lower, yeah, you could keep spamming it, I guess. But if you have 1 spell power, imagine just you blind somebody and that's only significant for that turn. Like, imagine if that blinded unit is faster than any of your guys. Then you don't even get the chance to blind, because the blind goes away, And I think they already have a turn, right? Because they're faster. So blind only ensures that half strength retaliation, which is pretty bad if you have just one spell power. So it's problematic for these guys, again, the barbarians and knights, for example. So maybe this one, because it enables them to do more with their spells, maybe it's still more significant than the cost reduction. And also, +4 knowledge, +5 knowledge. These give you so much more spell points that essentially you could accept a full cost, blind, paralyzed, whatever, and still not be affected by by the cost, I mean. So maybe around here, potentially, but again, if you don't have any of these spells, then this artifact is pretty bad, as opposed to the +3 attack, +3 defense. Honestly, you know what? These are so impactful all the time, with no question about it, right? It's like a no-brainer. +3 attack, give me the thing. Easy. Skull cap, it depends. So because it depends, maybe like this, just above the +3 knowledge artifact. I would say that makes sense. Let me know what you think yet again. Then we have the Elemental Ring. Cost of summoning spells reduced by half, rounded up. So that would mean summon water, elemental, fire, whatever. All these elementals, which are the most costly spells, 30 mana. But if you reduce them by half, if it would be rounded, it would be 15 or 16 based on the rounding that's going on. If it's there's something going on. Well, no, actually, what rounded? Because it's 15. Okay, it's just 15. So that is quite significant because, you know, summon elementals would summon 3 times your power in creatures, right? So if you have 10 spell power, for example, you generate 30 guys, right? And 30 guys, that would be worth it most of the time, even with 30 mana. But with 15, that's crazy. Imagine, you know, you know those memes like the Virgin whatever versus the Chad. You know, the Virgin hypnotize user with no skull cap, paying 15 mana to hypnotize whatever, an insignificant stack, versus the Chad elemental ring user who generates 30 elementals for the same cost, right? What do you mean? It's clearly very good. Now the issue is, how often do you have those spells, or any of them, right? Because it's those are a 5th level spell. So, and 5th level spells, essentially there are 10 5th level spells. There's no other source of getting them. So that means you have a 1 in 10 chance, provided that it's completely random, right? 1 in 10 chance of getting a specific spell, or, you know, because there are 4 summon elemental spells, you have a 4 in 10 chance, or 2 in 5, something like that. 40% as a chance to generate such a spell from your Mage Guild level 5. So that's a pretty decent chance, right? 40%, that's the best. Yeah, we haven't seen that yet so far. So it's not, you know, it's still kind of situational. You know, it's not something that applies all the time, like the plus attack, plus spell power, right? Those are always gonna give you some benefit. This one, unless, you know, if you get unlucky enough to get that unlucky 60% chance of getting something else, well, then it is a bit problematic. But again, you know, if you get, you know, yeah, you get unlucky enough to not be able to use your elemental ring to synergize with someone elemental, but because you didn't generate those, probably you would have generated a town portal, which is great, dimension door, you know, Armageddon, which could be nice as well. So, you know, the 5th level spells are pretty good, maybe except for Hypnotize, which is highly situational anyway. But, you know, anyway, there's a decent chance of summoning, of getting a summoning spell, for sure. 40%, not too bad. Also, if you have a library, again, you double the chance, roughly, I think. Yeah, that is pretty nice, and you could spam these ones, because it's not like a mirror image, right? Like you are limited in only cloning one stack, or cloning a stack just once, let me say that, right? But when it comes to elementals, you could summon a lot. As long as you have mana, then you can summon as many as you want, really, and it's a pain to deal with them, for sure, because unlike the set Guardian spells, which would place 4x power in elemental creatures on a mine, in that situation, the the stack is split in 5, right? If you generate, let's say, 30 guys, or let's say, yeah, 32 guys, right? They're going to be split. So it's easier to deal with 5 stacks of roughly equal number of units. But when it comes to summoning spells, right, in the battle, then you would have them concentrated on just one stack, and that's more difficult to deal with for sure. Now, these elementals have some vulnerabilities as well, but even with those, because the cost is so low, you can just keep spamming those things, and if you have enough spell power, that is gonna be such a difficult battle for the opposition that you might just win only using this, honestly. So Elemental Ring is pretty good. Now, I'm not sure about summoning spells. I'm not sure if these affect the Set Guardian and or the Haunt spells. I'm not sure. That would be interesting as well. Imagine if it would reduce the Haunt from 8 to 4, then you could farm experience even better. That would be interesting as well, but I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen. I need to test this. I thought about this just now, but you know, what are you gonna do? Anyway, Elemental Ring, pretty nice. However, how do you rank it compared to the other ones? Well. 40% chance of getting that, right? Unless you have a library. Okay. So that is such a game-breaking thing. But if you don't get any summoning spells, it's completely useless. That's the biggest issue, right? So 40%. It's not ultra situational necessarily, but you know, it's still sometimes pretty potentially bad. But because whenever you can actually use it, it's so good. I would say probably somewhere around, maybe, God, it's so good, man, whenever you can actually use it. Maybe here. Very nice. Very strong, indeed. Actually, even, no, I'm gonna put it at an S. Even, imagine how ridiculous it actually is, even though being situational, and it's still so good. Now, maybe just bring it down, just because there's a chance of you not getting the spells necessary, but still, holy, it's ridiculous to use it and to spam all those guys, provided that you have the mana to do it, and the spell power to have significant stacks as well. But if you can do that, you're winning the game almost certainly. Yeah, for sure. The next one is the Book of Elements. The effectiveness of summoning spells are doubled. So instead of 6x being created when you summon elementals, you get 6x. That's ridiculous. If you get both of these, oh man, dude, imagine getting 64, a stack of 64 dudes just for 15 mana. That would be insane. Or even for 30 mana. That's so difficult to deal with if you have a lot of spell power. So obviously, this synergizes very well with one of the strongest spells in the game, provided that you have actually the knowledge and you can get the spell, right? But wow, Book of Elements, pretty nice. But again, kind of the same, you know, it's quite situational just like that. Yeah, I would say, you know, which one is better though if you could only pick one? You know, reduce by half, so you can cast 2 stacks instead of just 1. Or casting 1 stack that's just combining just the equivalent of the 2 stacks combined. Huh. Well. It depends on the situation, obviously, right? If you go for 2 stacks, then they might be more susceptible to Chain Lightning, for example. Because I've made this mistake before, like, for example, with Titans. In some battle, I split my Titans to defend the castle. I had, like, 3 stacks of 1. I thought it was a good idea, you know? But I didn't foresee that the enemy would have Chain Lightning, and it kind of obliterated me. But if I would have combined all of the Titans into 1 stack of 3, the Chain Lightning wouldn't have dealt as much damage because it's only 1 target, right? Even though you target the Titan, yeah, you suffer 40x damage, right? 40x of his power and damage, yeah, sure. But if you're splitting them, you get 40x, 20x, and 10x as well of the total amount of health that the Titans would have. So you get what I mean, right? Sometimes it's better to not split, sometimes it's better to split. I don't know, but still, just slightly below it as well. Now, unfortunately, these could be useless if you don't have the spells, just as I've said. And also, they're useless in the early game. That's the biggest issue. Now, it depends on if the Haunt or Set Guardian are going to be affected, especially Haunt, because it's a level 2 spell. If Haunt would be affected by them, yeah, you could haunt more mines near the enemy's castle, such that you could slow their production down significantly. Or you can just generate so many ghosts that nobody's going to enter there until they get a very significant tanky stack or something like that. Or, you know, there needs to be some preparation going on. You can still use them if and only if they still affect those Haunt and Set Guardian spells, but I'm not sure about that. I don't know. Might correct myself in the comments if I test this. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah. Okay, we're getting closer to the end game, boys. It's Gold Watch. Effectiveness of hypnotizing spells are doubled. So instead of 25x, now it's 50x, which means that it's a very hard counter for Resurrection, because that means that, you know, Resurrection just resurrects 50x power, or heals 50x power, right? But let's say stack died, right? And the enemy casts Resurrection, so 50x power arises from the dead. That's pretty interesting, because if you have the same amount of spell power as the opponent or more, then you could control that resurrected unit, and then the opponent won't be able to resurrect it again at all, which is quite nice. But again, Hypnotize is kind of a, you know, I would still say, even with this consideration, it's still kind of a meme spell. It costs too much. Maybe with the skull cap, you can make it work a little bit more. Yeah, you can, you know, hypnotize some genies and stuff like that, maybe, or some unit that has a percentage chance of casting something else, right? Like, for example, the unicorn's casting blind or something like that. And even if, you know, for example, there are some artifacts that make you immune to some spells, but not necessarily for the same exact spell being cast by a creature. You know, like if you're immune to blind spells, let's say, the unicorns can still blind you, I'm pretty sure. So that could be interesting, right? Okay, the guy's immune to blind, but let me hypnotize somebody like the unicorn, and with that, I can hope to blind. But, you know, it's kind of circumstantial. But still, I don't like this one. It's kind of useless most of the time. Getting specifically hypnotizes a 10% chance only from the Mage Guild level 5, provided you don't have more castles or something like that, obviously. But I don't like this most of the time. It's completely useless. Yeah, 50x, that's nice and all. And if that would have been the normal hypnotize spell, yeah, okay, it would have been nice. But this artifact, unfortunately, whenever it's generated, it's hard to make it work. I don't like it. Too situational. Maybe somewhere around here. Maybe even worse than than the Fire Cloak, honestly. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Very difficult to pull off. At least this one, you know, reduces some damage. This one, how do you make it work, man? You need hypnotized. You need a situation in which somebody is hypnotizable, and also it would be worth it to hypnotize them. Oh, man. Oh, I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous. The next one is the Ankh. Effectiveness of resurrection and animate spells are doubled. So instead of 50x, it's 100x. Boys, that is so significant. Like, even in that series, the Skeleton Only Evil campaign in Heroes of Might and Magic 2, man, I got the Ankh at some point in the scenario. What was that, like 4 or something like that, or 5? Yeah, I think 5. On a very small map, getting the Ankh and Animate Dead, I would have resurrected 100x my power. And 100x power, that means that per spell power, you would resurrect about 25 skeletons. Imagine that, right? That's what, well, for skeletons only, but obviously, in normal circumstances, you resurrect, you know, the bone dragons, the liches, the vampire lords specifically. That's the biggest, the best target for Animate Dead, right? Because they heal themselves anyway, and also with Animate Dead, you keep them alive. And Animate Dead for 100x power, that's so significant that essentially it would be such a pain to fight against the Necromancer or the Vampire Lords, and also they're immune to the Hypnotize, so there's no counter to it anyway. Yeah, the Ankh is pretty nice if you have the Resurrection spells or the Animate Dead. Animate Dead, 16% chance, no, sorry, what is it, like 12.5% chance of getting it from the Mage Shield level 3, or from those 6% chance of getting it from a Shrine of the Third Circle. But again, provided that these chances are completely random. But Resurrection and Resurrection True has a 10% chance of occurring, unless you have a library. And the normal Resurrection is the same as the Animate Dead, I'm pretty sure, 12.5%. So it's difficult to combine these. I mean, what are the chances you have one of these spells plus the Angth? I don't know. It's really strong whenever you can actually get it, but how often is that? So because of this, it can't quite be that high. So I would say, well, again, it's so difficult to rank this, because it's so situational, but whenever you can use it, it's so good. The Angth could be useless, that's the biggest issue. Could be useless. There's a very reasonable chance that on some maps you could never see Resurrection or Animate Dead. So what are you going to do with the Angth? Nothing. That's the answer. The blunt answer. So maybe honestly below the resources, which are always going to be significant. Which is crazy to say. But yeah, it's just because of the situational aspect of getting these spells and being able to use them. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm not sure. Lightning Rod. Lightning spells do 50% more damage. Pretty impactful. Imagine going from a lightning bolt that deals 25x power to 37.5. 37.5 is on par with the damage dealt on the first target of a chain lightning. Pretty nice. And the chain lightning itself deals 60x for the first target, then 30, 15, and 7.5. Pretty good. Of course, lightning spells quite devastating for sure. Lightning Rod, whenever you combine it with these, especially at least just with the lightning bolt, that is so significant that it's a very good spell for sure. Oh, sorry, artifact. Now, how good is it compared to the knowledge, +3 defense, and these other ones, or even morale or luck? I'd say, it always affects your hero, right? It's not situational like the other ones. I would say you get it, there's a reasonable chance to get this spell, for sure. Not as high as getting the summoning spell, right? 40% as opposed to, 27% I think for the lightning bolt. Right. I could put this one below the summoning ones, perhaps. I think that would make sense. It's quite impactful for sure. 50% more damage would mean that essentially it's as if you would get 50% more spell power temporarily just for that spell. So that is nice. 50% more could be insane. I mean, it scales very well. If you have more spell power, that's even more, right? It could be, it's as if, let's say if you would have 8 spell power and you get this one, that means that it would generate an Arcane Necklace that only affects the lightning spell. I think that makes sense as an association, but I'd still put it lower than these other dudes, for sure. Perhaps, yeah. It's very impactful, but if you don't have the lightning bolt, what are you going to do, right? And there's a reasonable chance you're not going to get it, or chain lightning as well. But whenever you do get them, they're quite impactful for sure. Yeah. Everhot Lava Rock. Fire spells do 50% more damage, which is not that crazy because the fire spells deal 10x damage per targeted unit, and now they would deal 15x instead, 15x power. Is that significant enough? It's still better, for sure, but it's not even, it's almost, it's in the midpoint between a mass magic arrow and a mass cold ray. I guess. Is that significant? It's alright. It's alright. But it's not, the most impactful thing out there, because how often do you go for fire spells? I don't know. So, because of this, perhaps, it's a damaging spell, yeah. It's, but it's too situational, it's just, I almost never go for fire spells unless I'm fighting water elementals. But even then, with water elementals that suffer double damage from fire spells. Let's assume you have this lava rock, or whatever it's called. Yeah, lava rock. You have this one, right? 50% more damage. So that's 15x and doubled, so 30x damage onto one dude, right? All that nonsense, all the costs, right? 9 power and 12 respectively, or is it 12 or 15? for the Fire Blast. Anyway, all that nonsense just to deal, what, 30x power? Unless the guy summoned a ton of water elementals that are clustering and you can deal more damage to them, it's not that significant because 30x is a little bit more than just a normal lightning bolt. I'm not sure about this. It's just the biggest drawback is that the fire spells are just not that accessible and they don't deal that much damage anyway. Going from 10x to 15x per targeted guy, I wouldn't say is that significant. But that's not to say it's too bad, but I would still put it potentially below the Angth, probably. Still, this could be useless, but this one, it's more probable that this is useless, I would say, potentially. But maybe whenever you can actually use it, might be more impactful than just +1 to attack or whatever. And wood and ore, most of the time you have an abundance, so, you know, perhaps like this, but again, you know, most of the time I'm not that satisfied with the ranking, but that's only because the spells are so, the artifacts are so different that it's difficult to understand which one is better and which one is not. Evercold Icicle, ice spells do 50% more damage. So again, the same consideration. I would say this is better because Cold Ray is more accessible. So you go from a 20x Cold Ray to a 30x one, and the Cold Ring is just kind of like a fireball, so it's not... it has the same extra effect as the Lava Rock, so I wouldn't say that's significant. But the Cold Ray going from 20 to 30 makes it more impactful than a normal Lightning Bolt, for example, which is nice, I would say. But still, the Lightning Rod is so much better than the Icicle. So I would say it's in between these two ones, right? Somewhere, maybe just to... It would be fair to put it at an A, right? In between them. But compared to the other ones... Well. Definitely not better than +3 attack or all these guys. Probably not. So... potentially better than the knowledge ones, I would say. But not better than the Skull Cow. Well. More damage or just less cost for a lot of spells. Well, probably less of a cost. Yeah, maybe like this. Then we have some pendants that make the hero immune to some spells. Pendant of Life. All heroes' troops are immune to death spells. The death spells would be the Death Ripple and the Death Wave. Death Ripple deals 5x power to all non-undead creatures, and the Death Wave is double that, so 10x, so it's like a magic arrow, and the Death Ripple is half a magic arrow, a mass magic arrow, or something like that. Okay, so that's interesting, you know, that's nice. So the only use for this one, to be immune to death spells, well, no, there are two uses. If a necromancer would go for Death Wave against you, and you're not a necromancer, yeah, this might make... It would make you immune to that damage. But would it have been that significant anyway? Like 10x? Not that much, right? The Mass Magic Arrow, you could sustain that damage and not much is going to happen anyway. And the issue, especially against the AI, or even the human players, for example, your opposition could make a mistake, in a sense. Like, they could go for a Death Ripple thinking it's a good idea, but in reality, it's not that much damage. But they could have had another spell that would have been more impactful, but they didn't realize it, right? So the thing is that maybe sometimes it's better to let the opponent Death Ripple you, or Death Wave you, right? Because it's not significant, as opposed to not letting them do it, because if you're immune to a spell, if the opponent tries to cast that spell, they would get blocked, and they would see a message like, spell will affect no one, right? And because of that, they might go for something else that might be more impactful and more devastating to you than the normal death spells. You know, sometimes it might be better to let them make that mistake. You know, that's what I would say. Right. But also, okay, so anyway, that's an interesting consideration. But normally, yes, you do this just to deter the enemy from, or to block the enemy necromancer from casting a Death Wave or Death Ripple. Sure. But another interesting thing is that there's a chance you, as a non-necromancer, to get those death spells as well, and you can't quite use them unless you are willing to damage your own guys just to damage everybody else. But again, as I've said, you know, these spells are not that impactful, so would you go for that? I don't know. But it's interesting as an option to have this Pendant of Life on you as a non-necromancer, fighting another non-necromancer, and going for a death wave that affects only them, because your guys are immune. I guess you can do that. But, would you? Should you? Is the better question. Maybe not. But, it's interesting, I guess. So, death spells. Well, I don't think the death spells are that strong, so being immune to them specifically is not necessarily useful. Like, I wouldn't have thought about this. Oh man, if only there would have been an artifact, right? In the alternate universe in which this pendant of life didn't exist, would I have thought, man, if only I would have had this type of artifact that would somehow make me immune. No, I would never, no way, it's impossible. So yeah, this could be significant if you just are attacking army camps that are, that have 5 stacks of equal value, right? And you don't have a mass, a chain lightning or something like that, and you just want to significantly, actually slightly damage each stack. I guess you could go for that as a non-necromancer. You have this pendant, you can use it against all those, stacks of whatever, the archers, peasants, orcs, stuff like that. I guess you could go for that, but it's definitely not impactful. Not great. Not that terrible either. I'd say it is somewhere around a D, honestly. It's not great at all. Could use it more often than the hypnotize thing, but even the fire cloak might be more significant than this. Even though, well, it's kind of the same amount of damage. No, actually, this one is a little bit better because it targets everybody wherever they are. These ones, you reduce the damage, but you wouldn't have that many targets. I don't know, maybe somewhere around here, like a D+. It's alright, but it's situational. Pendant of Death. All heroes' troops are immune to holy spells. So holy spells are the ones that damage all undead creatures, right? There's Holy Word, deals 10x power in damage to every undead creature. And Holy Shout, which deals 20x, which is like, these you would think of them as a mass Magic Arrow onto Necromancers, or a mass Cold Ray for the Holy Shout. These are quite significant. The Holy Shout especially kind of obliterates the Necromancer for sure. So this Pendant of Death is only beneficial for the Necromancer that wants to prevent the enemy from going for holy spells, or the unlucky Necromancer that generated a Holy Shout or Holy Word. Well, not Holy Word necessarily, yeah, maybe generated these holy spells, but they're a Necromancer, so they can't use them. But if they're fighting a mirror match against another Necromancer, and you have a holy, the Pendant of Death, you can go for Holy Word to destroy the other Necromancer, but not yourself. That's interesting, but it's highly situational. Like, imagine, Necromancer versus Necromancer, you somehow got a holy spell that you want to use against the guy, and you get this artifact specifically. I don't know, but it's still better than the death spells one. Better than this, but, I mean, this one can be used by anybody that's not a Necromancer, just because, and against non-Necromancers as well. This one can only be used by Necromancers against Necromancers. It's more impactful whenever that situation arises, but it's rarer, way rarer. Maybe like this. I don't know. These are kind of ridiculous. Pendant of Free Will. All heroes' troops are immune to hypnotizing spells. A meme, same consideration, making yourself immune might actually help the opposition, because casting a hypnotize and having that be worth it is quite rare. So I would say most of the time, unless the player himself is a super highly skilled Heroes of Might and Magic 2 enjoyer, most of the time, hypnotize would be a wasted spell. Why wouldn't you just let them? No, don't make yourself immune to that. Let them consume the mana for no reason whatsoever. Let them do it. This is bad. This is a bad spell, I would say, because you would counter somebody that actually knows what they're doing, and in a situation in which a hypnotizable unit or hypnotizing a specific unit would be worth it, like for the genius or something like that. But how often would you find such a player? I don't know, or such a situation in which that hypnotize would have destroyed you so much. Nah, it's a bad artifact. So bad, so bad that it's even worse than this other one that reduces the cost, right? No, sorry, it doubles the effectiveness. It's so useless that I don't even know what it does, really. But still, or I keep forgetting anyway. Okay, Holy Pendant. Heroes' troops are immune to curse spells. That is interesting. Doesn't affect the Necromancers, of course, and doesn't affect the Crusaders, for example. But being immune to curse, so curse and mass curse specifically, that is pretty nice, because curse is quite devastating, and maybe you don't really want to go for a you know, a mass cure, mass dispel, or something like that. It's quite a pain to deal with somebody that spams mass curse on you, especially if they have that what is it, like the evil eye, right? If they have the evil eye and they would normally keep mass cursing you, that's burning your mana very quickly, because if they mass curse you with a 6 cost and your mass cure is costing 15 or mass dispel is 12, accepting a mass curse on yourself is pretty crazy. But also dealing with it in such a way that you're burning your mana faster than the opposition is also pretty bad. So Holy Pendant is a hard counter to that. It's a nice artifact, I would say, for sure. Now, again, how often does the AI go for curse? I don't know. And also this, I'm pretty sure this artifact doesn't prevent the mummies from cursing you, for example. So that's also a consideration, but, you know, it's rare to be affected by that. I like this artifact, but it's not the best out there necessarily. I would say probably kind of like a B, perhaps. But yeah, it's a hard counter for the evil eye, perhaps, but it's still not the strongest one out there. Maybe, oh, I don't know. Some around the B, maybe below Angst. Maybe. Immune to curse spells. Unless they have mass curse, it's not that significant, I would say. So, you know, and also it depends on, you know, if they would have gone for mass curse and they can't use it, what are they gonna do instead? Is also a good question as well, but you can't quite control or, you know, factor that in. The enemy's opportunity cost is kind of crazy to consider that as well. So perhaps some around here, maybe even worse than the fire one. No, curse is quite significant, maybe a little bit better than the fire one, but not as significant as the Angst, probably. Yeah, because it only deters the mass curse, which doesn't happen that often anyway. Then it's the Seeing Eye Pendant. All heroes' troops are immune to blindness spells, specifically blind. Blind is quite controlling. Again, if you're a necromancer, this doesn't affect you at all. Or if you have titans or elemental stuff like that, those are immune to blind as well. But that being said, blind is such a controlling spell that being immune to it is quite strong, I must say. So it could be better than even the curse one, because curse, well, again, it depends on what the stack would be, right? If you blind a very significant stack, eventually you would have to deal with it. But cursing it most of the time would be way more impactful, actually, especially if the stack itself or the unit has a big range as well. So, you know, even in that, spoiler alert for the spells tier list, I still said that curse is better than blind most of the time, and I still hold that that belief. But still, because blind is so controlling, I would still say that the artifact that makes you immune to blind might be more impactful than the curse one, because you can deal with the curse better. You know, so let me put it like this: a curse in this situation, these artifacts are only defensive. You know, like you're preventing a curse on yourself or a blind on yourself. So defensively, maybe blind. Defensive blind is preventing a blind is better than preventing a curse, but casting a curse is better than casting a blind most of the time. That's what I would say, honestly. That's why, like, the curse spell is better than the blind most of the time, but being affected by one, you know, it's kind of the reverse whenever it's defensively, or whenever you're thinking defensively only, I would say. So I would put it like this, and anyway, just to save face, to be relatively consistent, I guess, but yeah. Anyway, Most of the time, blind is quite a accessible spell. 27% chance of getting it. So, could be better than even the Angth because, well, it's not as situational, Perhaps like this, even, having, reducing the cost of Curse and Bless or Lightning Bolt, is preventing a blind better than reducing the damage dealt by a Lightning Bolt? Again, it depends. But I would say maybe not. Maybe not quite. Not quite. Maybe somewhere around here would make sense. 2 more pendants. Serenity Pendant. All heroes' troops are immune to Berserk spells. That's crazy. Berserk. Highly situational. How many times? I mean, have I ever seen the enemy AI going for Berserk? I think so. Kinda. But very rare indeed. And it makes sense whenever you're trying to defend your guys and you don't have anti-magic or something like that. Like in that situation in which I remember specifically in the campaign of the normal one in Heroes 2, I fought against a barbarian that had like 30 trolls and 15 cyclopes, and he moved the cyclopes near the trolls just to defend them. Now, obviously, if I would have had Berserker cast on the cyclopes, that would have been super devastating. But well, I didn't have it. So yeah, that's the normal situation. You don't have it. The opposition is not going to have it probably. But even if they would, and they would go for it, yeah, in that specific type of situation, having the pendant, this Serenity dependent, Serenity Pendant would be impactful. But, it's a situation. So, well, Berserker it's kind of on par with the Hypnotize. It's kind of difficult to use, difficult to get into that situation, difficult to even get the spell, and it's quite costly as well. Fortunately, it doesn't rely on spell power. It's not, it's not dependent on spell power. So yeah, but I would say it's not the best thing out there, right? This Serenity Pendant's effectiveness. No, let me say it like this: the effectiveness of the Serenity Pendant is dependent on the situation. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, not the greatest. Maybe a D. Then the Kinetic Pendant. All heroes' troops are immune to paralyzed spells. So I would say this is just slightly below the blind. Paralyzed is less accessible, a little bit worse. I mean, the effect is better than the blind, for sure, because it's instead of a half retaliation, it's no retaliation whatsoever. Yeah, sure, but the cost is higher. 50% higher, actually, and it's the Paralyze spell is not as accessible as the blind. So, because of these considerations, I would say Paralyze is slightly worse than blind. So, having this would be slightly worse as well. So, just below the blind one. Yeah, makes sense. All right, just 7 more to go, boys. And also, when it comes to the expansion ones, I have never played the expansion, so it's going to take me a bit of time to do that tier list as well. And also the ultimate artifacts, I would say that's a different tier list altogether. But that being said, the Wand of Negation. All heroes' troops are immune to Dispel spells. Okay, well, this is interesting as well. Immune to Dispel spells. Well, Dispel, there are only 2 Dispel spells, right? Which are Dispel Magic and Mass Dispel. Mass Dispel affects every creature. And that is a bit problematic because if you wouldn't have Mass Cure, for example, and you would be affected by Mass Curse, let's say, right? And you want to dispel it, but you have the Wand of Negation, and you don't have Mass Cure, but you have Mass Dispel, you can't use it anymore. That's bad. That's pretty bad, right? Maybe I would have wanted to just cast Mass Dispel to cure my guys, but I can't use it anymore. That's pretty bad, actually. But if you would have Mass Cure, okay, it's fine. But what if you don't? Because it's not that high of a chance to get Mass Cure, because it's a level 4 spell. Mass Dispel, on the other hand, is a level 3 spell. The chance of getting either of them is the same. It's like, what? 12.5%, right? So, yeah, being immune to Mass Dispel might be problematic sometimes, but I do understand if you combine it with beneficial spells only. Like if you have Mass Bless, Mass Haste, or something like that, and you make yourself immune to Mass Dispel, The enemy can't possibly do anything about that. But on the other hand, if the enemy casts a mass negative spell on you, like mass slow or mass dispel, GG no re, unless you have a mass cure. But what are the chances of that happening? Or you compensate with a mass bless or mass curse of your own, of course, right? If you are affected by mass slow, you cast mass haste, you're not slowed anymore, I'm pretty sure. Or, again, if you're affected by mass curse, you mass bless, mass curse disappears, I guess. But I don't think I like this spell that much. Because of this potential drawback of not being able to cure my own guys. Maybe it's okay. I would say intuitively I would put it at a C level, something like that. Potentially even, kind of below the the Ice Cloak, which is kind of crazy. It means that it's kind of bad or highly situational. Like this one is not bad, but it's situational. I mean, it's just, you use it rarely, let's say. But this one, I don't like the fact that I wouldn't have control over mass dispelling my guys. Right? It would have been interesting, another consideration here, it would have been interesting if these artifacts could have been bought. Something like that, like a roguelike element, something like that. You would have a shop that would have random artifacts that would have some sort of cost, right? Resources and money as well, which would have been interesting. And you could have chosen which artifact you would use, because that would be interesting, right? Because then you would devise a specific strategy and you would go for Wand of Negation. But if it's randomly generated, or you would get it randomly, you might just not use it. Anyway, that being said, Enchanted Hourglass extends the duration of your hero's spells by 2 turns. So this is kind of just a partial effect of a spell power plus 2 would be. It's just partially getting the effect from it. So plus 2 turns, that's only significant if you really don't have much spell power. So I would imagine that this is beneficial for the barbarians and knights. That is pretty nice, right? It's just it's slightly worse than getting, not slightly, but it's significantly worse than getting plus 2 spell power. But it's okay. It's alright. But you hit diminishing returns. If you have a lot of spell power, if you're not one of these factions that are not spellcasters naturally, plus 2 turns is not that ridiculously powerful. So it's only going to be beneficial just to compensate somewhat for the lack of natural spell power that those factions would have, like the barbarians and knights. So because of this, well, I would say that probably they're better. Well, yet again, how do you even rank this, man? Because it enables them to cast a bless that lasts longer, or bloodlust, or these things that don't require spell power to be effective, but or for which the spell power would only have this exact effect of getting more turns, then it would be okay for those factions. But for everybody else, it's kind of a meme. So overall, I don't know. I would say, I would have said that it's closer to the Pearl that just enables those guys, but that's ridiculous. I would say probably at a B, somewhere around there. It's just not important. It's probably below these ones, right? Would you, as a barbarian, choose, if you could, to be immune to paralyze, or immune to blind, or choose to make your bless spells last 2 more turns? Again, as always, the same exact answer. That's a theme for these tier lists. It depends. But based on my intuition, probably being immune to these super controlling spells would be more beneficial than just making them last longer. Making your spells last longer, or even, it's worse than having those spells cost less, because you could just keep spamming them. Even though that's debatable. Like if I have 1 spell power, I cast Bless on one of my guys, and that Bless already is expiring next turn. I need to keep. I'm blocked in this situation in which I need to keep casting the same thing over and over again, as opposed to this situation in which I cast a Bless, and I know that at least for 3 turns, that or at least 2 more turns, that that stack is going to be affected by Bless, which provides me the possibility to cast Bless on somebody else as well. Here, I cast Bless on somebody that I'm gonna attack with, and that's it. Oh, yeah. I don't know how to rank this, really. But I would say the 2 turns one, just because of this flexibility that it adds, might be slightly better than reducing these ones, provided that you wouldn't have the Bless and Mass Curse, because in those situations, these artifacts are way better. So how do you rank that? Yeah. Still, I'm gonna go with my original thought, probably around here. Now, the Wizard's Hat extends the duration of your hero's spells by 10 turns, which is massive overkill. It's ridiculous. Wizard's Hat, what a joke. I mean, for the natural spellcasters that would have, let's say, on average, maybe 6 spell power, do you really need a spell to last more than 6 turns? I don't know, man. Going specifically from 6 turns to 16? I don't know, man. I guess like the seemingly endless blind or something like that. Yeah, I guess, but it's not, you know, if I get this artifact, it's not like, oh my god, it's so significant, you know. But for the Barbarians and Knights, this one, just, if you get this one, all your problems go away, right? You cast the Bless, it's seemingly endless at this point, right? So that's pretty significant, right? For those factions, this one would be better, obviously, than the Hourglass, but I still wouldn't say it's so significant that it would go above the other artifacts in this tier list. Probably not. I would say no. Telescope. Oh, here we go. The first completely meme artifact that's not intended to be completely negative, like the Fizbin of Misfortune or whatever. Plus 1 viewing range. Wow, bro. Man. Oh, let me get that telescope, man. If only I would have had this artifact, then I would have won the game. I don't know, man. It's the same consideration as why I said that, you know, scouting is kind of a meme skill as well. Yeah, sure, in some situations, maybe seeing farther into the distance might get you that one piece of information that would make you change your strategy so significantly that from that point onwards you win the game. Or you see so far ahead that you see an island or something, and if you have, again, it's nested ifs, right? We're many ifs deep, which is not great. It's too situational, right? But let's say you have Dimension Door, and with the extra viewing range plus the scouting, you see so far past in the distance that you see what's it called, an island, and you can Dimension Door there. Maybe, but it's really a meme. If you get Telescope, nah, man, it's just not that impactful. It's not that great. So I would say Telescope is the first actual completely meme artifact that would be just slightly above F. Right? These are completely negative. This one, the only negative part of it is that it's useless and it occupies one of your slots. So it's kind of like the opportunity cost is the issue here, but I'm not comfortable putting it at an F because these guys here are just completely destructive. Okay, 3 more. Statesman's Quill reduces the cost of surrender to 10% value of units in hero's army. That is quite interesting because that means that, you know, if you have a significant army that would necessitate you paying, let's say, I don't know, 15,000, which is insane. 15,000 gold just to be able to surrender, right? You have some dragons, you have whatever, some hydras, whatever, stuff like that. 15,000, that's insane. Chances are you might not even have that money to pay the opposition. And also, even if you would, getting the opposition 15 extra gold, giving it to them is just a massive disadvantage. But 10%, you go from 15,000 to 1,500. That's it, 1,500. Well, that's quite significant, right? You just surrender, keep your whole army, and then live to fight another day. That's quite nice. And also, you can do this, you can make some shenanigans with this. You know, you can just attack an enemy with a very fast unit, like Phoenixes and such. Cast Storm, cast whatever. Yeah, Storm. Let's say Storm, devastate the enemy, and then you surrender, and you give them pretty much nothing, and you keep those phoenixes as opposed to just retreating. So that's nice, right? You just spam storm with your phoenixes, and you just give them give the opposition a little bit of money, but definitely not enough to compensate for the lost value provided by that storm's damage. So that is nice. And also this one you can use it as a pseudo teleport possibility, let's say. So let's say you're very far away, you've ventured into the enemy territory, and you really would want to get extra army on yourself, get some maybe replenish your spell points, and just spend the night at the castle, let's say, at a castle of yours. Well, how do you do that efficiently without having a town portal or town gate? Easy. You just attack some guy. If you know for sure that you would have a turn, at least if you have a fast unit and such, and you just surrender. 10%, that's nothing, right? You pay that, and then you spawn at whatever castle you want. So that could be interesting, but you need to attack an enemy hero specifically. That's the drawback here. You can't surrender against an army camp. So still, but 10%, that's pretty good. But how often are you going to use this? Not that often. I would put it just instinctually at a B level. It's interesting for sure, but most of the time it's not the most game-breaking thing imaginable. It's situational, right? A lot of the time it might be useless. I mean, when it comes to the campaign, for example, most of the time I don't really surrender. I mean, it's kind of rare. So it's not the most significant artifact imaginable, but it's not bad at all. Maybe here, I don't know, perhaps, you know, just because you save so much army value because of it. Okay, then we have these ones that are expansion related, so that's a different tier list for another day. But the final two ones are the ammo cart and the golden bow. Ammo cart gives ranged creatures unlimited ammunition. Now that sounds good in theory, but the thing is that most ranged units have a ton of shots, really, right? The Titan has 24. You know, many, like the Druids, have 16, the upgraded version, but the normal base version has 8 shots only. How often would you run out of these shots in a battle? How long? I mean, how many turns would a battle last, right? Could it last 24 turns? Maybe not. But again, if you got good morale and you shoot many times, then yeah, okay. Then it's gonna be significant, right? Sometimes you could run out of ammo, especially on these in the early game, let's say, when you have like 8 shots, perhaps something like that. The centaurs have 8 shots, but in the late game you won't really use centaurs much, or you haven't upgraded the druids, stuff like that, you know. But running out of ammo is kind of rare, I would say, right? So is this such a game changer? Potentially not. I wouldn't say so, right? The most significant ranged units, which would be the Archmages and the Titans, they already have many shots anyway, and the Archmages don't have a penalty, and well, actually both of these units don't have a penalty for attacking melee, if that's a word, right? So not shooting from a distance, right? So even if they run out of ammunition, it's just a matter of the only drawback is that they need to close the gap, right? Or to just move. But unlimited ammunition sounds good, doesn't really work. You know, sounds good, doesn't work. But yeah, it's alright, but I would still put it at kind of at a D. It's it's kind of rare to run out of shots, really. Yeah, I don't know about this one, but in that specific situation in which you have those extra few shots at your disposal, do you win the game just based on that? Probably not. So I would say just a D. Probably. What were even these spells? Immune to what? The Berserker or something like that? Yeah, better than the Berserker. Better than this. Even the, yeah, maybe D+. D+, it's okay. And the final one, the Golden Bow, eliminates the penalty for ranged troops shooting past obstacles. And as far as I know, the only obstacle is actually the castle walls. So, again, highly situational to even go for a castle, right? To attack during a siege, let's say. So, that's already pretty low, and the issue is that, you know, if you really want this functionality, the archery secondary skill already gives you this benefit, right? Now, it's a rare situation or occurrence to want to get archery but not generate it at all. Now, it happened to me, right, in I think the first 2 missions in that ranged-only campaign, so yes, it is possible, entirely possible, to not get the archery, so the second best thing would be to get the golden bow. That's not really in your control, really, because it's generated randomly. But having this as the only benefit of it, I wouldn't say is that significant, because, yeah, how many times are you attacking a castle, first and foremost, and also, how many times do you have, you know, such significant ranged units that the difference between life and death would be that penalty specifically? I don't know. And even then, you could compensate with a teleport of sorts, or with an earthquake that destroys the castle walls faster. I don't know. I don't like the golden bow necessarily, but it's not entirely terrible. So, the final one would go below the ballista, for sure. Below even this, which one is more significant? The damage penalty lost during a siege specifically, or endless ammunition, even though you don't really run out of shots most of the time? What a joke. Man, it doesn't even matter, but maybe the bow better than the cart. I don't know. But anyway, that was it for today's video. Subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed it, if you enjoyed this type of video, and I'll see you next time, potentially for the expansion ones, and another video for the ultimate artifacts, because, you know, it's kind of nonsensical to put them against all of these, because ultimate artifacts are going to be S+ or something like that in their own category. That's kind of, you know, let me just do another video, because I've been filming for like, oh, I don't even know, like 1 hour and 40 minutes or something like that. I wouldn't have expected me to take this long, but, you know, I hope it was worth it. Okay, I'll see you next time.